I did call him and he's like, hey, I kind of want to sell like these properties. Ended up being like, okay, well, the best situation is that we do like a seller finance subject to deal on this. That was fruit of the first meetup. 6-7 months later, they turned into money in my pocket, money in his pocket. We had 2 years of just really bad sales, and I was making less than I made my first year in the job. The reward for the time is not really panning out anymore. My wife bought one of Brandon Turner's books. He was not into real estate at all. I wasn't into real estate at all. I just picked it up and read it and, oh, like you can do a HELOC, you can do all these different programs. This is how making things work.
You closed 4 deals last week. How does being intentional with your networking and meeting people helped you grow?
It's directly led to deals being closed. The first meetup we did, both sides came from being out in the community and connecting and networking with people.
Josh, welcome. Appreciate you coming here. Can you start off with just telling us a little bit about yourself and why we invited you here?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my wife earlier. I'm not sure what I have to talk about and what you guys will be interested in, but love to be here and thanks for having me. So I just moved back to Omaha, Nebraska. I guess now it's last year, earlier in 2025. Grew up in Kearney, Nebraska, kind of bounced around for the first part of my college years, and then afterward went to Tennessee, then out to California for about 12 years. Kind of moved around some different industries, and then finally found my way into real estate kind of in 2020. And so that's kind of probably what's ultimately led me to be here talking about real estate and different, business stuff on a podcast. So
It's interesting. So you mentioned moving to Tennessee. You moved there for soccer, and you went to a Christian school that was like completely nothing to do, like wasn't your religion, wasn't, you didn't know anything about the religion, just kind of jumped out just for the whatever, for the experience or whatever. Kind of talk to that and your mindset behind that, because I think that goes into play a little bit with your real estate as well.
yeah, well, I mean, I was Christian, and so that was part of what I was looking for in a college. Was I wanted to have high level soccer, but also with a Christian background in the school and everything. And this is called Lipscomb University, and they were a Church of Christ, which was, yeah, the part that I was like very unfamiliar with what that looked like. And I think we had talked about when we first met, like the differences. And I came from an evangelical background in church, and they had instruments. You could, you couldn't dance, but you could sing and you could use instruments and stuff. And Church of Christ, and that segment, that was a little bit more progressive of a Church of Christ church, but you couldn't use instruments when in the worship, and that was very unique for us, especially being in Nashville. There's like so much music and instruments and things, and so then when we have to go to like our chapel services, it's like, oh, you got to just sing with your voices, and you can hear everybody, you can hear yourself, and very much different than what I'm used to. But it was a great experience, and loved playing soccer there, and getting to combine those two things and then forget everything that I learned there and moved on.
What was your degree?
Spanish. Yep. Pretty interesting.
And that's helped you in life?
So much. I graduated in 3.5 years. And I mean, at that time, I think the tuition was probably like $40,000 a year or something. And that was like, I mean, if I could have stayed here in Nebraska and gone to a state school, it would have been like, $5,000 to $10,000 a year, I think it was. So just seemed like an intense amount of money to be paying for a degree that wasn't really sure what I'd do with it. So
we're gonna pause that because I have a feeling we're recording this conversation.
Oh, because that's okay.
Yeah, so we're off to a great start.
That's okay.
I'm gonna check my wife's flight one.
Yeah, check it. Get her to safety.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, we
Kids' school. They couldn't. If they call me the third time, my daughter forgot her book.
Did you?
So,
How'd you take
How
off
old
your
is she?
microphone?
I took it off and I put it on the,
Oh,
yeah.
I think it's still kind of
11.
picking up.
Yeah, she forgot her book for her class. I
It's not
felt
your
it
fault.
vibrate the first time and I shut it off, and the second time,
Yeah. If it's a devil ring, yeah,
yeah, but it's a book.
she'll make it.
Mm.
What?
Well,
They
this
want
is
you to
the
bring it there?
yeah, it's the learning lesson of you know, when we say to get ready for school, it means get ready for school, not, you know,
Yeah.
play on your phone. So
Yeah.
Well, looks like Valerie's probably crying at the airport right now.
cancel again.
Yeah, it's not canceled, but it's delayed an hour and a half.
Oof.
So, I don't even know where to pick back up. You were
Spanish, using Spanish.
Yeah, you were talking about using Spanish, and
Mhm.
you want me to just ask
Yeah,
another
sure.
question, or you want
You
to continue?
can go into that, or yeah.
I'll switch over. So you went there, learned Spanish, graduated in 3.5 years, and then kind of take us on your journey from there.
Yeah. Then I floated over to California, Southern California, Orange County, and that was like, you know, growing up in Nebraska. I think, are you guys both from Nebraska originally?
No,
No.
neither one of us.
Oh, well, so it was the first thing I was like, all right, I'm leaving, and like playing soccer here and stuff. Like soccer wasn't very um, like popular at that time in Nebraska, and football. I mean, still football is still everything here, but I was like, I'm going to go somewhere where soccer's more appreciated, and they like different things, and the weather's better, and so that's where California came in. And I was saying I had a Spanish degree, and really the only reason I got a Spanish degree was because I went to Spain for 6 months, and my credits just added up for Spanish, and that was my minor. And then I came back, and my teacher's assistant, or whatever they called the people that help you go through the college, was like, you could graduate this semester if you just switched your major to business, or to Spanish instead of business, and made business your minor. So I was like, oh, sweet, like $40,000. Like I don't have to go for a whole nother year. It was going to be a whole nother year to finish my business, or just finish in 3.5 years for Spanish. So I was like, I'll take that. And then I had a internship at Oakley, the sunglass company in Southern California. So I was like, yeah, I'm going, I'm going to Orange County and the sun, and see what that's about. So went to my internship at Oakley and turned into a job, after a couple of months. And I was paying like $300 to live in somebody's house, just a friend of a friend's, and rode that for a few years. And it was amazing. I thought I was making like the most money in the world being this like sales rep at Oakley, and my expenses were about zero, because that's pretty cheap to live in Southern California, and you could go to the beach. There's tons of mountain biking. Really got into like action sports industry. Oakley's all about action sports. Everybody that worked there. So I didn't really have any interest in real estate or anything at that time. It was just, hey, this is a fun spot to be. I can go mountain biking. I can go road biking. Do all this stuff. I'm a single guy out there, just living with no expenses. So we just bought bikes, and got into a ton of riding and things like that. And then that turned into me switching a couple of years later to work for Trek Bikes, and then worked there for 10 years. And then that's when I ultimately just left like a year and a half ago from there. I was a sales rep for a long time there. I was a marketing rep before that. Drove all around California, Arizona, Nevada, doing events, mountain bike events and things like that, getting to ride in a lot of cool places, travel in a van, do the whole van life thing, kind of when that was starting to be more popular. So that was a lot of fun, just to go travel all these different places that I didn't get to experience when I was growing up in Nebraska. We went to Colorado a lot, went to some other states, but didn't ever really spend a whole lot of time on the West Coast. So it was a great time just to be single and go try a bunch of different places, and have a lot of good times riding. So
So it seems like you had a lot of fun. You were doing a lot of stuff. Had a sounds to be a pretty good job. Why transition away from there? What was kind of the calling there to transition out of Trek, out of sales and all that stuff, where you can make good money? I'm assuming that it's pays pretty decently. I've been a salesperson in California. Why the switch?
Yeah, it was pretty good for bike sales and everything. Like it's not, you're not selling houses, you're not selling like medical devices or anything like that, but it was pretty good. And once COVID hit, like everything shifted for bikes, and the whole industry just shot up. Um, and I think it was like March when kind of COVID started, and then I think by April or May, bike sales had just flew off the charts, and we ran out of inventory within the next month or two. Just completely wiped everything out, and then we just played a back order game for about 2 years, trying to get shops inventory and accounts inventory, and it was really great for 2 years. And then it just, like, houses have kind of, they haven't like tanked. Some markets they've tanked since that time frame, but um, where bikes, they just completely tanked, and everybody was discounting. Everybody had too much inventory. Shops had too much inventory. Manufacturers had too much inventory, and then it really just went backward.
So
So
it was good, and then just boom.
it was good,
Like a
and then
nice
it was
little couple-
amazing, and then it was even worse than it was amazing. So um, that kind of really set me back on that being a, just a long-term play for me. And um, they were also in Wisconsin. I didn't see myself moving to Wisconsin or like leveling up in that company. It was just going to be being the sales rep in Northern California for a long time. And then I think probably like in 2020, sometime, or maybe slightly before that, I just remember talking to my dad on the phone one time, and he was like saying, you should diversify like your income and stuff. I was like, I don't know, like we'll see. And then I think my wife bought one of Brandon Turner's books just randomly. She was not into real estate at all. I wasn't into real estate at all. And she bought, I don't remember which one it was, but it was just like a basic intro to real estate investing and long-term rentals. And she had read the book, and then I think I just picked it up and read it. And I was always thinking, like, all these people have like these houses that are worth like $1 million in California. And I'm like, how do like any of these, like some of my friends, their parents have these houses that they've lived in forever. Like, how do they afford things? Like, how does this all work? I had no idea about any of it. And then reading Brand's book, I was like, oh, like you can do a HELOC, you can do all these different programs with your personal house. Like, this is how they're like making things work here and stuff. And so that kind of just opened my eyes to look more into real estate. And then I think that's when I started listening to Bigger Pockets. Um, and then at some point, I listened to Rich Dad Poor Dad in there, and kind of all those books. And I think that compiled with kind of the COVID, um, era, and being in California, it was a lot different than being in Nebraska. I think COVID lasted about 3 months here, and COVID lasted about 2 years in California. Like, we stopped going to accounts, like traveling, right when COVID started. And then, it was probably 6 to 12 months before our company even said, like, okay, you should start going back to see your dealers, type of thing. We were doing everything virtual at that time. We are placing a lot of
Wearing masks
orders.
on Zoom and
Yeah, wearing masks on Zoom. There would be people in our neighborhood like walking their dog with a mask on their dog and a mask on themselves. It was pretty comical. A lot of people, driving their own car with a mask, with gloves on, stuff like that. And thankfully, we had the beach right next to us. We could walk to the beach, and they would shut down the beaches. But at the one we lived at, the ranger was like, "No, like, you guys can come on the beach. You're good." So he would patrol, but he'd just say like, "No big groups." So we just spent a lot of time going to the beach and everything, and that was cool. But um, so I bring that up because a lot of things like changed in corporate world and work life and stuff. People are losing jobs for maybe their beliefs on COVID and vaccines and things like that, and just didn't. Was like, this is a little more fragile than I expected it to be. Just going out of college, I didn't have ever like earn my own money, besides like a little couple of entrepreneurial like stints that I had, just like little things that opened like a little bike shop in college. Um, and had a paper route, like little things like that were kind of like my own job or business that I kind of started. But other than that, it was just like, my dad worked for 40 years in a company, still is, type of thing, and loves it. But I was like, I don't see myself doing that too. So these things just kind of came up, and like I could see, like, a job, you might lose it just because of you think differently about something, or you don't want to do it to the T of what they're asking you to do, type of thing, and then your income can completely gone.
Yeah, I find that very uh, interesting, and I think more people should be more eye-opening. Should be more eye-opening to more people, I think. But I wanted to ask you about your dad. You said he told you to diversify, but yet he's been in the same, I think you said same company for
Yeah,
40 years or
yeah.
working for 40 years. When he said diversify, what did he mean? I'm assuming he didn't mean real estate, but maybe he did.
I think at one point he also said, like, if I had to redo things, I probably would have like gotten into real estate earlier. He he didn't have real estate early on in his career, or with my mom, um, and they started getting real estate maybe like 12, 14 years ago,
Okay.
I think. And so he probably built up, like, I don't know exactly how his trajectory went, but built up enough income and extra savings and stuff to where he would always coach us on getting stocks. He set us up with a financial advisor when we were in high school or earlier. We got our checkbooks in middle school. I think we got debit cards in high school at some point and things like that. So they were really good at teaching us how to save and to put it into some like passive investments and things like that, and work with our financial advisor. And so definitely like taught me that side of things. And then I think he had seen like what real estate could kind of do for him as he was on the tail end of his career, and that kind of just coaching me, maybe I should do something like that up front. I don't know if he had other ideas on what that looked like, but that's kind of where I took it, I guess, was real estate. Because once I read that book and then started listening to Bigger Pockets, I just started seeing so many different ideas and ways that you can make money that didn't just have to come from going to 8 to 5 job type of thing. So
I mean, from years with those big companies and being a successful sales agent with them, I'm sure there's a lot of skills that you picked up that are applicable to being a real estate agent now. Probably a lot that aren't, but I mean, just being able to talk to people and lead funnels and stuff like that. But is there any crossover and stuff that you look back at time at Oakley and time selling bikes that now help give you a competitive advantage as a real estate agent?
I think the biggest thing is probably just being consistent and following up and being, everybody says they're a good communicator and stuff, and I'm not a great communicator. I'd say that but I actually follow up on what I say I'm going to do. And that was always probably the biggest feedback within Trek or Oakley that I did, was that I always did what I said I was going to do. And I tried to hold people accountable. If like we do like these continuous improvement events at Trek with our retailers where we go through their P&Ls, we go through all their finances, all their sales, all these things with the shop owner. And it was a way that we could like help coach them from things that we're seeing in different retailers and kind of bring it to one retailer, and say like, hey, this person's doing this person's doing that. Like, can you learn some of this? Because a lot of times you had different like shop owners. You had like a hobbyist shop owner who's done it for a long time and they just really love bikes. And so that's why they opened a bike shop. And then they had like, maybe they love bikes at one point, or they still love bikes, but they actually treat it like a super business. They wanted to grow. They weren't just content with doing the same amount they were last year. And so we're trying to kind of bridge that gap a little bit for the hobbyists and make the bike industry a little bit more of a serious retail industry. And so that was like a, your question was back to skills.
Mhm. How do you apply them to?
Yeah. And so we would like hold those people accountable in those situations. And so I got good at like maybe motivating them to do some of the things. Half of the things they just saw as like corporate stuff that was trying to be pushed down to them,
Mhm.
where they're their own business owner and they don't want to be a corporation type of thing. So it's kind of trying to find a blend of what was great for them and what was maybe something that wasn't good for them right now, but maybe in the future as they work on some other stuff, that we could incorporate some of those corporate, strategies that we think are good for a shop. But so I think just holding them accountable to those things was always like big feedback that I would always come back. I wouldn't push everything, but I would push the things I thought was right for that person and what they would get on board with. So I think that translates into real estate, especially like lead follow-up is extremely key. And just doing what you say you're going to do. A lot of times realtors don't do that. And it's typically the common theme that I get from somebody that is bashing their current realtor that they're working with is that, oh, they never get back to me. I asked them to write an offer like 4 days ago, and I still haven't seen the offer in my inbox. Things like that. I'm not the fastest person in the world, but I just try not to commit if I don't think I can do it, type of thing. And so, yeah, I think that'd be one of the biggest. And then talking to people is definitely a great thing. Like at Oakley, we'd do presentations, and that's where I kind of started, like, doing trainings with people on the technology of Oakley and sunglasses, and then same thing that translated to marketing at Trek when I was a rep going around doing events. I was just talking to people like every event, several days a week, multiple times, repeating the same message over and over. So I think that also helped translate into repeating a real estate message, solutions for sellers or buyers type of thing in real estate, and being able to hone that craft of just talking to people and getting deals done.
How do you hold yourself accountable when you don't have a boss today? So like when you work for Trek or work for Oakley, you probably report it to somebody. Today, you're independent, basically real estate agent, and do wholesaling for yourself. How do you hold yourself accountable, or do you have an accountability partner, or what's kind of your secret there?
I've tried to do accountability partners before, and I don't know, we don't hold each other accountable, so then it fails. Um, and and that's kind of been something that has been a strength of mine, I think, since I was little. At a certain age, like I just started practicing soccer, I think in maybe fourth or fifth grade. And, through middle school, through high school, I always just held myself accountable to making sure that I was bettering myself in soccer. Um, and at a certain point, school became that way for me as well. And then at a certain point too, just my relationship with Jesus and everything was also part of that. And so just trying to grow those things have kind of come, especially the soccer and just exercise in general. It's probably like I don't have super addictive like issues with things, but like except for exercise, I would say is like my addiction, and something that I just feel like I need to do every day. And so I think that started with soccer and just training, working out, exercising, playing the sport, all that kind of stuff. And then that has translated into when I am motivated, these other avenues of work or school and things. And so I don't think I have just like a thing that I just know that I'm gonna be missing out if I don't do these things. And I think maybe the quality of saving and being cheap up front, of like learning from my dad to save for the future for when things get bad. I think I just have that mindset that I can think into the future and that I need to do these boring things now so that I can have rewards in the future and I can be prepared for the future, type of thing. Just, yeah, I think that fear maybe sets in that if I don't do these things, it's going to cost me in the future.
Yeah, I find people talk about motivation a lot, and we when we talk about motivation, we think external motivation, and what you're talking about is internal motivation. Like it just comes intrinsically to you, and I think that is probably the number one thing if you're going to be a self starter and all that stuff is just being motivated from the inside out and letting your actions speak for you versus always looking for the next Instagram video that's going to
Yeah.
motivate you, or the David Goggins running and be hard, like type thing. Like
Yeah.
it works in the moment, but the next day you're looking for the next. It's like a drug.
Yeah.
Like you're constantly chasing.
I think just having like a high standard from a young age on things. Me and my best friend from growing up, we would always like kind of hold each other accountable and push each other a bit. Um, and I just remember we would come to Creighton University here for our soccer camps, and I just remember like very vividly one time the coach of Creighton was like, "Hey, all you kids, like you shouldn't drink soda. Like it's really bad for you, and it's gonna impede your ability to become a great athlete and a soccer player." And I think we were in sixth or seventh grade, and healthy eating wasn't like really a thing. 20 years ago, it wasn't like a popular Instagram thing, and we're just really like, yeah, we should do this. We should cut this out. And so at that point, like him and I really never drank pop or soda again, um, and do now a little bit, but like it was just, and it's not like it's bad or a sin to drink soda, but it was just one thing that like it was a standard that somebody said was really good, probably for you not to do. And so we started then, and then we just continued on that trajectory. Um, so I think just having some of those basic standards from when we were younger just have carried forward. Um, so
So clearly, faith is very important to your life, and yeah, so I'm curious how you incorporate it into your business, into your daily rituals.
I'm still figuring that out too, because I've gone through transition where maybe you guys have had similar, but growing up, I grew up in the church, thought I knew everything. I would read books, I'd go to conferences, and you're like, oh, I got this thing down. Like XYZ, this is what you do. And then like everybody else will kind of catch up, in my class or in my school, my soccer team, like, whatever that is, whatever my community was, like, I kind of have the path and they're like still figuring out type of thing. And then you find out quickly, like you go to college, there's a lot more different views, there's a lot more different things. And you're like, okay, like, all right, maybe I don't have it exactly right. And then moved, and that was in Tennessee, like it's Bible Belt. It's, we were at a Christian school. And then moving to Southern California, that kind of like quickly changed. Churches were a lot different, a lot of different views, a lot of different people. And then Orange County is still, for California, pretty conservative and faith-based of an area. And we moved to Santa Cruz in Northern California for the last 9 years of that, 9 or 8 years of that. And then that's like completely different. Very, a lot of like, very progressive. It's near San Jose, San Francisco, a lot of different views, a lot of um, Buddhist religion, universalism, and different things like that. And so it wasn't very common to speak about it. And that was kind of like a big change here when we moved to Omaha. We're like, oh yeah, like people like are okay talking about religion and Christianity or different religions because it's kind of like quieted. Um, at least it just felt very suppressed where we were at, in that we had some circles that we were running in, but it wasn't like Orange County where there was a big church community and different churches. And there's like mega churches in Orange County. We lived right by Saddleback Church, which was, I think, one of the biggest churches in the country. Rick Warren pastors that and things like that. So there was just like a lot of different views. And so I've kind of gone through different histories of like being more outspoken up front and then being more reserved on it, and trying to figure out what the balance is of that's most effective. There was a time with a group that I was a part of in Southern California, and there was a guy that was LDS or Mormon, and he had kind of joined our group and was interested in, it was a faith-based group, and was very interested in what we're doing. And I really appreciate and like respect a lot of those guys, and they really motivated me to be more outward spoken about my faith and to kind of provoke others to go that direction as well in their life. And this one particular kid, I think he was like 18 or 19, and He wasn't really driving well with his parents' faith of the LDS church, and so we were working through him with the Christian faith and the differences and what that looked like. And um, it almost felt like he really wanted some sort of change in that. And then a couple of the other guys and mentors of mine there had maybe pushed him a little like too quickly, too fast, and trying to hold him accountable, and maybe more on the, I want to say legalistic, but like just like very structured, like, hey, this is XYZ. So you've made this decision. Now your life should look like this. And then that just completely pushed him away to where he didn't want anything to do with it. And I was kind of a part of that. And it kind of made me step back to think, what does, you know, being in relation with other people and trying to promote a relationship with Christ look like with um, just whoever we're coming in contact with. And I would say it kind of, in Santa Cruz, I didn't have like a super outward spoken ministry or things that I did have in Santa Cruz. Kind of toward the end, I started with another guy at our church, it's called futsal. It's like 5-on-5 indoor soccer on a basketball court. Basically, you have small goals, and we just started doing that once a week. And we ended up, some weeks we'd have like 60 people, and we'd rotate teams. And we'd have like 10, 12 teams. And that was just really cool. It was at our church. We didn't like push any like um, faith-based stuff on it, but just wanted to be a safe place. Nobody would get in fights, which was very common in soccer. You get the adults together and they're getting competitive, and fights start happening at all the different leagues. And this was one place that everybody always commented, like, nobody gets in fights. It's all clean. Like, nobody's swearing at each other and stuff. And it was just a great way to get people together. And I really enjoyed that time. And many people did start coming to the church just because it was an opportunity for them to come to the church and see what it was about. And that, me and the other pastor that were kind of running it, we're just there trying to build relationships with them. And so I've kind of tried to bring that a little bit over into the soccer world here since we moved. And then also on the real estate side of things, like, real estate is a big deal in a lot of people's lives. So I've tried to figure out, and I'm still figuring out what that balance is of how can I implement some of these values or even like outward spoken things. Like the other day, one guy was saying that at the end of his sales calls with people, he runs a marriage counseling business, but at the end of his sales calls, they usually pray for the people. And it's like, what? You like pray for the people? And he's like, yeah. And it's really great. It's like one of the favorite things that we do at the end of our calls. And I was like, okay. So now I've kind of thought, like, okay, there's been a few times where sellers are very distressed. They're at the lowest, sometimes the lowest points of their life. And how can we, be a good steward of them bringing their problem to us and letting me solve it for them, and then also maybe pointing them towards Jesus here as they change. So just trying to and this is not by any means like a perfection or anything. It's just something I've started trying. Is just, when it feels right, that I ask if I can pray for them, and they probably get really awkward about it, but it's usually in a private setting, and just, can I just pray for your situation, and that we can find a problem, or we can find a solution for your problem that will kind of kickstart you back off to flourish and thrive, to come. So that's kind of one thing I've done to try to blend that. But I think also it's just about having good relationships with the other people in your industry. And I really like that about Omaha. Like, the real estate community is pretty tight knit, and a lot of people know each other. And so if you do one bad thing with one person, like, I've already heard it from other people about, this person does this person does that type of thing. And just, it's a constant reminder, like, how high standards you need to hold yourself to when you're doing these types of business transactions and working with everybody, because it shows. And if, I'm Josh going to church and speaking this message about Jesus, but then I'm going to sellers and I'm swindling them. I'm trying to, get behind them on the price and renegotiate at the end of the deal, or, be shady with buyers and things like that. it won't go well. And so I think just trying to hold a good standard with doing business with everybody on both sides.
And what I like about what you just said is that your ministry wasn't standing on a podium and preaching to people and trying to convince them. It was providing an outlet of people that enjoy soccer and then also can find a clean way of doing it. And that became the ministry. And if that leads one person to Christ, then your ministry is a success.
Yeah.
And, so I think that's like Ryan starting, Bible study group. And I've seen many men's groups and like ministries where someone's preaching. Those things are effective, but for the person, I can't remember who it was we talked about, but there's someone that was a Christian that just swore all the time and tattoos and all this stuff, and someone asked him like, why do you do that? Like, you're
George Jenk or heavy.
yeah, and he was saying that because the people that are on the outside will never get a foot in the door until they see someone who looks like them opening the door for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool. Again, no matter what scenario that is.
Yeah, that's also one thing. Like I felt like my community had kind of dwindled a little bit going to Santa Cruz in Northern California, and that area kind of has you might see it on people's trucks or cars there. It's like locals only type of thing, or they shorten it to lokes only. And it was a very because there's a big surfing culture there. And it's amazing surfing, amazing terrain, amazing mountains, redwood forest, all like amazing place in California. Like it was one of my favorite places, and that's one of the reasons why I moved there. But they kind of have that stigma that's stuck around. I think it's kind of stemmed from the surf culture, just like you don't want to share like your waves type of thing. You get on a wave and it's like it's not an abundance mindset. It's a scarcity mindset, 100%. And then as surfing got more popular, more people started finding the spots that they're surfing, and then so it's very secretive, kind of like maybe real estate used to be, and now it's a lot more abundant mindset, it seems like, and that you actually might do more by sharing. And so I think that kind of locals only vibe kind of reduced the amount of communities that were built, especially in like mountain biking. There wasn't a whole lot of like fully legal trails in Santa Cruz there, which is like a whole just like bike thing topic, but like whether you can ride a trail or not. And so then that kind of stems people to not have big communities. And we had a big cycling community in Orange County. There was a lot of legal trails, a lot of legal places for you to go ride, and that were fun and challenging, and not just like a little beginner trail type of thing. And so I think that also, there's just these things about the area that did not lead to community building. Although I still love the community and I love a lot of people there, it just felt like that was kind of something that you're always going to be fighting against. And me and my wife were doing like marriage counseling for a few years there. And one time my counselor asked something about like community or something. And it like, I don't know, have you guys done counseling before ever? Like sometimes they would ask you a question or you say something and then you just start crying and it's just like you feel it in your head or in your like chest. And she asked something about like community, and one of my friends in Orange County had just passed away and from this cycling group. And it just like, I was talking about it, struck a chord, started crying and all this stuff with my wife here, there. And she's like, it feels like, do you think that's about like your community and you don't feel like you have some of those good like male relationships that you had in Orange County or in the past? I was like, yeah, I think that's probably to do with it. And so when we moved to Omaha, you started talking about the communities and stuff. My goal was like not to sit behind a computer all the time. I wasn't really sure what my business was going to look like, if I was going to go more toward like helping primary people buying their personal residence, or if I was going to work with investors. And I kind of just wanted to see which way it went. But I knew I wanted to just get more in community and build those with different avenues. So I didn't want to sit behind a computer and cold call like I was doing all the time, or like reaching out to realtors just about different leads that they might have. I really just wanted to do the things I wanted to do. And so that's kind of what I've put my focus on. I am also like, I took the summer off, be with my kids. We just went to the gym, went to the pool, did the zoo, all the fun things for the summer because we had just moved here, wanted to get them acclimated. And then I still am, part to full-time dad as my wife works like a 9 to 5 job. And so with that, I was like, all right, I'm just going to start getting in communities. I don't know a ton of people here in Omaha, but I'm going to start getting communities and building communities. And so the kind of avenues I've looked at that is one, soccer, I've already talked about, two, a church that I'm getting plugged into, and small groups and things like that. And then three is like the real estate community. So, we talked about the Omaha REIAs, starting to get in those, but I'm also part of the sub 2 community, which is like the nationwide investor group that Pace Morby started. And they didn't really have a community here meeting like they do in a lot of the other states. It's very big in California. They have meetups in Northern California and Southern California. There's hundreds of members. And there was about 20 to 30 members here in Nebraska, and my brother-in-law was one of those. And he's like, yeah, there's no community here for it. The people don't talk to each other. They don't know each other that are in the group. And so that was like my first thing I did was we started Nebraska Sub 2 meetup for all the members or anyone that wants to come. And so, and then my last community is the gym, kind of the exercise thing, go Lifetime Fitness here in Omaha. And it's just a great place. Like you see more people. And so just the more times you can connect with people, see them, say hi just randomly, leads to relationship building. And sorry, I'm a little sick still.
No, you're good.
I think just those were the things I wanted to do. And as you meet more people, you'll do more business, but also going from the point that I'm not doing those relationships to just do business. I'm doing the relationships to do relationships, and then hoping that something will follow, or there'll be some path opened up for my business that just naturally comes. And that's kind of what has happened.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that men are missing is community, and where we fall short quite a bit, both personally, professionally, um, psychologically, just everything. I think a lot of that stems from those men are very egotistical and territorial and kind of fall short there. And it's not terribly, I mean, I think we overly complicate meeting people. You talk about the meetups and stuff. That's how I met you. Was I think you're actually talking to my wife, and I walked up.
Yeah.
How I met, but the thing stuck in my mind about the Church of Christ thing is because that's what my wife was raised Church of
Yeah.
Christ, and I remember joking around with you. Wow, you really swung the other way with
Yeah.
it, and but just from that little connection where I think we exchanged phone numbers and kind of stayed in contact somewhat, through the last couple months,
Yeah.
whatever it's been since I met you. But you've been intentional with your networking. You started a group and stuff like that. You sponsored Pace Morby coming into town for one of his, I think he was doing 50 states in 50 days
or he's doing 100, I think it's 100 meetups in 120 days he's doing, and he's getting toward the end. I think February is his last one sometime.
But you set that up for Omaha and made it. I ended up missing it. It was on Sunday, I think, and I was busy. But so you've been intentional with everything you've done. How has that helped you being here for a year roughly? Grow your business. I mean, you talked about closing 4 deals last week, so obviously you're doing well. How has being intentional with your networking and meeting people helped you grow?
Well, I mean, it's directly led to deals being closed. There's one of the guys that came to the first Sub 2 meetup we did in August, August or September. He was an investor. He was in Sub 2, and we just kept talking after that event. And one day I just had called him, and he's like, "Hey, I kind of want to sell like these properties." And I was like, "Okay, well, like let's go through it and everything." And ended up being like, "Okay, well, the best situation is that we do like a seller finance, a subject to deal on this. We do creative finance to sell these." And so that was and then I just closed those 3 deals last week, after a couple months of finding a buyer, and then also going through just the escrow period and different hiccups that come every time you go through something. You learn something new, and there's some new issue that you didn't know that was going to be there, type of thing. And so that was fruit of the first meetup that we did. And maybe 6-7 months later, they turned into money in my pocket, money in his pocket, a new deal for somebody else that I had also met at the Pace Morby event, connecting the dots there between the investor that had the properties and then sold them to some buyers that I met at the Pace Morby event. So like directly there, both sides came from being out in the community and being and connecting and networking with people. I just closed a deal that I brought to a flipper a couple of weeks ago or months ago now, and I met this guy probably in the first couple of weeks going to the gym in the summer when I wasn't even thinking about real estate. Like my goal for the summer was I'm not going to think about real estate. I'm going to slow down, kind of reset, and I'm not going to listen to a bunch of real estate podcasts. I'm not going to, because then I'm just focused on that, and that's all I do. So I met him in the workout class, and then became friends. And then at a certain point, I had a deal that worked for him. He bought it, and then we just listed it last week once he was done renovating it. And so, that came from just going to the gym, one of the communities that I've been intentional about, like growing relationships at. And then even with that, my brother-in-law, he was the one that kind of motivated me and spurred me on to create the Sub 2 meetup. And he comes to every single one, and he's more on the lending side. So he's connecting people with money and to people with money. And it was cool. After our second meetup, him and another Sub 2 student that didn't know each other before, they connected and did a lending deal together for somebody in Ohio doing a fix and flip. So somebody had 30 grand. He lended it to my brother-in-law, Jacob, who lended it to this fix and flipper, and they all made money on it. So that was, just the product of creating community and what it can do, not for me alone, but for the other people as well.
So I will bash Sub 2 and Pace Morby with this question
Yeah.
before I compliment them. So I am not a fan of Sub 2. I think it
Sub 2 the community, or Sub 2
Sub
the
2 the
subject
concept,
2? Yeah.
the subject to the concept behind it, because sometimes I feel like two reasons. One, as soon as people hear it, they just want to gravitate to it, and it's just like everything's subject to at that point in time, and that's all they can think about. And while I think it has its purpose, it's not every deal is a subject to, should be a subject to deal. So that's my one bash there is it's not a catch-all for everything. But what I do like what Pace did was, I feel like out of everybody in the national whatever you
like
want to
big
call
real
it,
estate, like influencers
that's
from
the
the
word I'm looking
past
for.
10 years.
Yeah, I feel like he has done the best job in building community and just getting people involved, and not only like community from his egotistical standpoint, community from helping others. Like he really preaches helping your fellow people, like help your people in Sub 2. Has that been your perspective? I've never joined Sub 2, so I'm looking at it from the outside, but that's my perspective of things. Is that factual?
Yeah, I'd say, like I mentioned, I think already that I'm pretty cheap, and I would never spend money on anything, especially like education for myself or anything. Like I listen to all the free stuff, go to YouTube, do all that stuff, and then when I'd done my first couple of real estate deals, I did it the traditional way, or like what Bigger Pockets would preach. Kind of house hack, live and flip, get your nice like primary residence loans and everything, and then you run out of money like super quick, putting 10 to 20% down in California on a property. And that's where I kind of found, I listened to Pace on the Bigger Pockets podcast at one point, and I was like, wow, this guy's like sharing a ton of stuff. And that's what I just remembered. He's sharing a ton of resources. He's being super helpful. sharing like all these things, and he just sounded a little bit different than most of the other people that were hopping on there. So then I just started listening to everything that he was doing, and I was like, this guy like shares like a ton of stuff, and was just giving me the confidence to like get more into the investor side of real estate. And so I looked into joining, and it's like, I don't know, this is like $10,000 or something at that time. And I was like, well, if you think it's going to be a good deal, like, do it. I was like, you should, like, you want me to spend $10,000 on this? And she's, yeah, go ahead. And I was like, okay, great. So I did it. And then like, they don't promise you a whole lot, but they over deliver like so much in the program. All the money that you use to sign up for the community goes to the sales company that is just bringing people on, called New Reach, and Pace doesn't own them or have any affiliate. And that was kind of, he'll say this all the time, like he doesn't want it to be a mentorship that everybody looks to him. If he dies, he's gone. Like it doesn't continue. And so he's been big about making it a community, and I would, stand by that, and that what you see is actually what happens, and even more, like just so many crazy opportunities that he provides to people to, if they put a little money in, or they sometimes they don't even have to put any money in, he'll give opportunities to people that like they don't deserve, and they didn't do anything, and he helps them. So, and then it kind of trickles down to the community and all the other leaders in the community kind of having that same mindset. So I think there's some bad actors, in any community and everything, and they try to, deal with that when it comes up. But for the most part, you can typically trust anyone in sub two, and that's been my experience. And so I think it trickles down from Pace, just growing that community and setting the standard from the start. And you can do a lot of business within sub two with all the connections and everything. There's tons of training, tons of knowledge and everything. But like ultimately it's just the confidence and the connections that you get, I think, through sub two that mean the most. And then getting in groups and rooms with people. So yeah, I think he's the real deal.
I'd like to circle back to you leaving your W-2 and what had to be true for you in order to leave W-2. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume something that as a Christian male, you wanted with a family, you wanted to be able to provide for your family. So leaving your W-2 was probably took a lot of thought, a lot of nights praying, if you will. What had to be true for you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, in order for you to leave your W-2 and have that, lack of a better term, have the balls to do it?
I think I probably, if things were going better there, I think I would have just kept writing it out. And it was just a safe, easy, predictable thing to do. We had 2 years of just really bad sales, and I was making less than I made my first year in the job, type of thing, and made that 2 years in a row. And so I was like, all right, well, this is kind of the reward for the time is not really panning out anymore. And so a couple things kind of came together to where it's like, all right, we should probably just cut the cord here, or like fully dive into that and stop doing real estate. And I didn't really want to do that. So I wouldn't say it was like super planned, but it was like, if it happened, I would be okay with it, type of thing. And so then when it did align, and it was like, okay, well, let's do this. And um, and then, yeah, I wouldn't say it was super planned, but I knew I had the ability to create the income, especially with extra time, um, plenty to provide. And then I had some rental properties in California too that were also nice cushion, that we're doing like short-term and mid-term rentals on. So I just had some safety there, and knew that if I put my full effort into it, like I would be totally fine. And I think going back to sub two, every time you go through like a new module or a new Zoom that they have there, they have this whole like library of all these things that you can do. Like, you have to be super lazy or unintelligible or unmotivated to not make money with one of these methods. And so I think just having that background and knowledge that there's 1,000 different ways to make money, and that's all. If that's the only thing I'm trying to do, then like I can pick one of these, and if one's not working, I can pick a different one, and you can make money on it and enough to provide for the family. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's kind of where I land on that, I guess. So
Tanner, if you got to have a question by now. You're
Well, I mean,
quieter than normal.
I'm curious because, I mean, you like the residential sales aspect of it, but it seems like what you're using, the tool you're using in the sub two and the investment side, have you found a bridge, or is there a goal of finding sellers that are in tough positions, connecting them with sub two, or what's your method there?
yeah, I'd say my method right now is I have three like buckets that I go to when I'm talking to someone. If we're talking to like a seller, I have the realtor side, I have the investor side, and then I have some blend in that. So I usually present three different options and then try to help guide them to one of those options based off the things that they've been telling me. Like, I think you might lean toward this one, or ask them which one they feel like they're leaning toward. And if it doesn't really align with what I think they're saying, then I might try to help them see why one of the options is better for what they want based off what they told me. But so I kind of go through, qualify them, ask a bunch of open-ended questions, figure out their context, their timeline, price, all that kind of stuff. And then once I get all that, then I kind of present my three buckets that they could fall into. And if it's in good condition, doesn't need a ton of work, and or they have the money to fix the house up, we can go list that on market. So that's my realtor pitch, is like, we'll go list it on market, we stage it, we do photos, do the traditional real estate thing that you're thinking of and that most people sell their house. And that's going to get you the most price. It might take a little bit longer and you might have more costs, but you're probably going to net the most if we do it correct. And so that's like, 80% of people, that's them. And then there's this other 20% that, they don't have the money to fix up their house, or they're in foreclosure. They owe too much money. They're behind on payments. They just went through a divorce. They have some foundation issue or something like that that's come up. And for them to put the money in to get to that retail sale is not going to happen. And so, we can go the cash route, which is, discounted offer. Like, we need to buy it, anywhere from 50 to 70 cents on the dollar. That's our cash route. It's going to be the most convenient and it's going to be the quickest option for you. And I think that's when you talk to just a normal realtor that just knows retail, just, option one, they see this as like sleazy and like you're taking over someone's house and you're manipulating them and things like that. But what they're operating off of is the assumption that everybody has the priority of the highest price when selling their house, because that's what realtors are taught a lot of times in school. Like, our job is to get the most money for the client as possible. But even if that takes 6 months, even if that takes 12 months, like, we can't wait that long sometimes. And so there's other people out there, and there's plenty of them. There's all the cash, we buy houses for cash ads out there, and people call and people sell to those because they prioritize speed and convenience. And so that's what I try to, promote with that, is that we're going to close quick. You're going to have assurance that we're closing, and you're going to get, this number for sure, type of thing. So that's cash. But, the problem you run into is a lot of people owe a lot more than what we can pay for it with cash with their current condition. Because if they're in a distressed, financial situation, they're probably in like distressed physical condition with the property. So, a cash offer is not going to solve their problem. So then we have a different solution, which we get into the creative finance stuff, where we can take over the mortgage with the subject to route. We can do a seller finance, or we can do a blend of the two. And so you can combine those two. You can do a seller finance with a subject to, and you might be able to get the price that they need to walk away from the property, to solve their problem, whatever it is. So we kind of have those three situations. And with the creative thing, you get a higher price to the seller. So it kind of acts like a retail, is usually what I tell them. Like, you need the price, but you want the convenience at the same time. So this is a way that we can do the convenience and the price, but you need to give some sort of terms with seller finance, or give over your mortgage, because now we're selling a house not just by itself, but with financing attached to it. So it's like a package. You get a house, you get financing, you buy it together. Instead of you buy the house from the seller and you go to the bank and you buy the loan, originate the loan, you have to pay money for that, and then you're going to be paying them. You can just buy them together and you can give the seller more money.
In the communities, do they talk about stories where things don't go right, and like what protections do they put in place to make sure it doesn't happen?
Oh yeah. There's different philosophies on subject to seller finance and how you can protect those sellers or the buyers, because both have risk. In any real estate transaction, there's risk. You could sell your personal house and you could get sued because they demoed something a couple of days later, and they found that you had covered up, or a previous seller had covered up something in the house, foundation crack it, something like that, and they could come sue you. There's always risk. Or you could not have done the proper due diligence and you didn't even own the house, or there was a lien that you didn't know about, and then you go to sell it and then there's a lien, or there's just a number of things. And so there's also risk in these transactions, and sometimes more, but we have plenty of different options with that. Just with a subject to transaction, it sounds like you guys are pretty familiar with that type of thing. So normally with a subject to, you're going to take over, if I'm buying Ryan's house, he's got a mortgage in his wife's name, and then he also owns the deed, which is just saying who owns the house. So we have the mortgage with their name on it that goes to the bank, and then we have the deed, which is the receipt, tells you that you own the house. And so the deed that says you own the house transfers typically in a subject to deal to the new owner. So I'm going to buy it, I get the deed, says Josh on it now. And when Ryan is still going to have his mortgage there. It's not going to switch to my name. It's going to stay in Ryan and his wife's name. So that's typically one of the biggest barriers on this with somebody, is that part. And so, that can go bad, because now I just got in a car accident and I'm not responding to anything, and I was manually paying the mortgage payments, and now I'm not paying the mortgage payments, and now his wife and Ryan's credit is on the line, and it's going to start going down. So that's one of the biggest things that can happen. But typically we'll put in the protections on those so that they can foreclose on the property. And then there's also options where you can put in a trust, where there's a trustee holding it, and they can basically, which this kind of gets in the weed, they can basically do the foreclosure a lot quicker if it's in a trust and the trustee knows what they're doing with the transaction and the paperwork's upfront. They can take that property back a lot quicker than a normal foreclosure. So that's one thing. The other thing is the due on sale clause. A bank might call the note due, the mortgage due, when they find out that the sale was transferred, which is totally legal and everything to do this. There's IRS codes that talk about subject to and what happens with it and how the taxes are paid on it. So it's a totally legal thing to do, and you're not doing something bad to the bank. It just says they have the right to call the note due when the sale is transferred. They don't have to. They could just leave it. And a lot of times you might just talk to the bank and be like, hey, we've been making these payments for 2 years. Are we good to keep going on this note, or do we need to refinance? That might be the case. They might ask you to. Sometimes they'll let you stay with the loan. So there's that. You can also deed the property back to the seller, which basically makes it a land contract or an agreement for sale. And so they're kind of like the legal title owners, but the seller or the buyer has all the other rights to the real estate. And so that's one way that you can, mitigate the due on sale clause. So there's a number of things, and it's happened, everything has happened. That's why we know about it. And then there's typically solutions involved. As long as you've done the paperwork up front and people are on the same page, there's like 3 pages of like one thing that's great about sub 2, they give you all the contracts and things, and he's constantly updating those with his attorney. And so you can utilize those, and there's 3 or 4 pages of just subject to disclosures of like, here's what happens, here's what you're doing, you initial this, you initial that, all that stuff. So it's upfront. But there's still risk, and there's still things that can happen, and you can still have lawsuits about it and everything. So it's part of the thing. So
Yeah, it's I like creative deals and I like all that stuff, but the more creative you get, the more legal jargon you
yeah,
need to go through.
yeah,
And that is one of the good things about joining. Like I said, I've never joined Pace's community, so I'm not advocating for it or against it, but he does share all those legal stuff, and you could easily spend $10,000 in just legal fees. And one of the things I noticed, like with his community, is people will be like, hey, I'll partner with you on this first deal, we'll split it 50-50 or
yeah,
whatever. And then you'll have all the legal documents after that or something to those effect. But then you kind of get your training wheels
yeah.
going. And yeah, so that wasn't a real question.
Well,
But
he's big on like partnering with people, especially when you're new, and that's what I did. Like uh, the first deal I did, I kind of did by myself, but it was just a cash deal. And then I think my first subject to deal we did as a team, and I partnered with somebody that had been one of the first sub 2 students that joined and had done many deals. So, and then I've done the same thing for other people where they had a lead, and then we took it to the finish line and helped them get all the way there. And like one of the people I'm thinking of in Arizona, I helped her do a deal, and then we did a second deal, and now she's doing all those deals by herself. And like it's cool to see her like now promoting those same listings that she might have that like failed the traditional way. Then you can go and sell it on seller finance or subject to get them that price that they need. If plan A didn't work, here's plan B, the creative way. We can still sell it for you. So it gives us as realtors too another backup option. And that's what a lot of times I tell people, like when they ask what your value proposition is for being our realtor type of thing, is like I have a lot of in-depth knowledge of the inner workings of real estate and investors and the different options to sell your house, so we can pivot if we need to. And like it's not everybody's, it doesn't work for everybody, so we're not going to make it force it. Sometimes you're just going to be stuck with the house for a couple more years, or you need to make it a rental, or you need to bring some cash to the table if you have it to close your house. That's going to happen. So yeah.
what to go to your meetup? What requirements do I have to be in Pace Morby sub 2? If someone's local to Omaha watching this, and I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. Is your meetup strictly tied to Pace Morby and subject to? Like, do I have to pay the 10 grand or whatever,
Yeah.
20 grand, or can I just show up?
Yeah, you can just show up. And that's one of the cool things too with Pace is like he just put a number on there to make sure that people like have some barrier to entry into the community, because when you don't pay anything, like
You don't pay attention.
you don't pay attention, and like anybody gets in then. So they do some vetting. It's not like crazy vetting or anything, but you don't have to be in sub 2 to come to our sub 2 meetups. Part of being like a sub 2 leader, like I'm the Nebraska sub 2 leader, and part of that is like they want us to be doing community building and outreach, whether it's a Zoom call or an in-person meetup. Whatever it is that we do, it all has to be free and anybody can join. So they like if we're promoting it as a sub 2 meetup, we can't charge for it, because, and that's Pace's barrier to entry is very low. It's like $10,000 to be in sub 2, and you might go to another mentorship that's $25,000 or $50,000 for 6 months, and then you're out of it. So his barrier is very low, and he provides a lot of value through that. And so he wants that barrier to be low for these types of things. And he knows as he gets these people in the community, he does more deals with people and he makes more money because he does deals with people. And so that's the same thing with this, is like, this is a free meetup. People can come and learn. They don't need to know anything. They don't need to pay anything to get this type of, relationship building or community building and networking, you can just come. Anybody comes. I'd say half the people are in Sub 2 or one of Pace's other communities. There's Gator is the other one, which is the lending side. So some people are in Gator, some people are in Sub 2 that come, and then half the people are not in any of these communities. So anyone can come in. Anyone's welcome. We'd love to have anybody.
It's interesting. So he created a community to basically get deal flow. So like you join the community, you started networking locally. He basically mandates that you don't charge, which gets his name out there. Well, then you could potentially join his community,
Yeah.
which he, from what you say, doesn't probably make money off from. But it gives him deal flow for what he actually does. So it's just an interesting concept to what you were saying.
And then you also get to do deals with people that are higher or further along in their real estate journey than you are, which gives you credibility.
It helps you learn.
And helps you get confidence to do them by yourself in the future, like we talked about. So it's a really cool, I don't know if you thought about all this stuff from the start, but like the way it's developed, it is very communal based and it helps everybody involved. It's not like a lot. I'll get the skeptical guys that watch all this free stuff. He's like, oh, he's just selling hard on like, he's making tons of money off the mentorship and stuff. And you tell him, like, no, he's not making any money off of you paying the company to join Sub 2. And they're like, no, that can't be. Like, he's got to own the company and he's making money off of it. Like, no, like he just makes money from doing deals with people. So it's cool.
Awesome. Well, I know you got to get out of here shortly. I know you had a pretty hard stop, but I want to end on this question. Well, I guess before the ending, but what does freedom mean to you?
Well, I'd say the real estate stuff comes from the freedom to control my days. And so I think being able to control what I spend my money on, what activities I do for business, what activities I do with my family. And so I think, leaving the W-2, that has been able to give me more freedom to do those things, whether it was, take the summer off, be with my kids. I think that's freedom. I think being able to say what you want to say is freedom. And, promote the things that, like, that's one of the problems I have with the corporate world is that you don't get to say whatever you want to say. And some things you might have to say, even if you think it's not good for the person that you're saying it to, type of thing. And so with the business freedom, I think being able to, if you want to pray for somebody at the end of a sales call, like you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And if you don't have to hit your numbers for the month if you don't want to. So I think being able to do what I want to do or what I think is best to do for my daily life and for my long-term life, and that I don't like to go travel a bunch and stuff. Like I like being in routine and doing similar things every day. So like freedom doesn't necessarily mean that I can go travel anywhere whenever I want to, but if I want to, like I could. So yeah, I think freedom to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, and be able to provide for my family and how I want, I guess.
Awesome. Any closing questions from you specifically?
I don't. No, I appreciate sharing the knowledge and the experience, and it's cool to see how you're building this community, and taking charge. Definitely look forward to seeing your success.
So if someone wants to get a hold of you, obviously we'll tag you in the podcast thing, but what's the easiest and best way?
I think my phone number is posted everywhere, but with the amount of spam calls I get. So, but I have a website. You can link it. It's easier to link. And then Instagram or Facebook's probably the easiest way. Just follow me or send me a message. It's fine. I'm usually checking those. And that's honestly where a lot of business comes from is Facebook and Instagram. So you can easily reach me there if it's business related or if you just want to play soccer or connect or whatever. That's where you can get me.
And I know you're really happy about your over 30 golden cleats or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah. You you put on the form, do you have any big awards or achievements? And that's kind of been a joke in our house because there's an outdoor soccer league of, men's over 30, and it's pretty legit. Like they have full on refs. You got jerseys. I was like impressed when I came and my friend was playing on it. And then the first season I got my wife makes fun of me for going, and my best friend's wife makes fun of him for going. And so is the joke, like, oh, I got a trophy at the end of the season for scoring the most goals. And so my daughter went and put it on my wife's side table by her bed when she woke up that morning to see it. And my wife's like, this is the stupidest thing ever. So that was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh yeah, I got this award.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
I remember reading it and just thought it was funny. So popped in my head right at the end. So.
Otherwise, no other big accolades or achievements or awards. I'm just kind of doing what I do. So
awesome. Well, Josh, appreciate you coming, and
thanks, guys.
Look forward to connecting more. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys.